Alright, so this is an excerpt from Beyond Biofeedback, and it's about Swami Rama, who I actually know quite a bit about, but this document kind of goes over the main thing he did while he was here. He was a Himalayan monk who held a pretty high religious role in India for a time, and he retired, decided to meditate in a cave for 11 months. When he emerged from the cave, he said, he came out with this new goal to introduce his spiritual healing, or whatever you would call it. He wants to introduce that into the West to try to help their medicine. That's kind of been his goal. He traveled all over the West, but this is when he came to America. Now, essentially Dr. Daniel Ferguson, at the time Chief of Medical Hygiene Clinic of Veterans Administration Hospital in St. Paul, Minnesota. Dr. Ferguson telephoned me, said that he had become acquainted with a yogi named Swami Rama who had demonstrated in the hospital an ability to obliterate his pulse. They had suggested with our psychophysiology equipment, it might be possible to obtain a record of what Swami was actually doing. Would we like to conduct such a project? Now, they did, spoiler alert, they did go through and decide to hook him up to machines and see what he could do. And I believe this was the first thing. He created a 10 degree temperature difference in the palm of his hand by contracting and dilating separate veins. Alright, so yeah, right here, the Swami increased the temperature difference between left and right sides of his hand in 2 stages. The first began shortly after the arbitrary 0 time, and the second started when he said, "Be attentive, I will do something." And the amount of control you would need over your own body to create this temperature difference in the palm of your hand, I haven't read through this in a while, but essentially it's one of those things that it's a voluntary control over what was once thought to be an involuntary bodily system. And he goes on to do several other experiments. Test my heart immediately. They hooked him up to a heart monitor, and regardless of what it shows up here, it's the graph I want to show you, where once he stopped his heart while hooked up to the machine, they even see here, his pulse is going down. Test my heart immediately. What is my heart doing now? And what is it? I need to find it here. But he said something about how it flutters. And the valve inside your heart is called atrial flutter, and he was able to talk to the nurse while his heart was stopped. I'm going to try to find that real quick. Okay, so I can't see. It looks like I don't know if he was able to talk while he stopped his heart. I think he was just talking a couple times during the entirety of the experiment. But yeah, they had seen that his heart rate had spiked, and he had even said, well, when you stop your heart this way, it still flutters in there. He fluttered his hands in demonstration. And then, where is it? Down here, he contacted Dr. Marvin Doon. Dr. Doon showed us slides made from patients' EKG records, in which the same phenomenon was demonstrated, and identified the state as atrial flutter. Section of the heart flutters. He happened to use the same word as the Swami used, in an oscillatory mode at its maximum rate. The chamber's not filling properly, the valve's not working properly, the blood pressure dropping. Suddenly he stopped and said, "What happened to this man anyway?" "Nothing," I answered. We took his wires off, and he went upstairs and gave his lecture. And that's not all. They basically, on their side of things, they were sort of throwing all these obstacles his way to say, well, we got to make sure you're actually doing it. And I believe that's what most of this is. Of course, right here, looks like he sent a letter. I'll go ahead and read through this. 1970. Most blessed Dr. Green, thank you very much for your sincere efforts in promoting the truth. I'd like to give you a few suggestions for the future tests in the lab. Okay, well, I'm not going to bother reading through this. Essentially, I mean, they go back and forth on proper methodology to make sure, they're properly obtaining the information here. And part of what he's about, and to me, it kind of relates to the other things when it boils down to, things like remote viewing, or the parapsychology that our government has been researching. I feel like this is an odd way that connects. In some way, it's like the same mental faculties that are applied in remote viewing, in my mind, are adjacent to the same faculties he's employing here to control his body. So he went on to go do those two things, stop his heart, change the temperature in his hand by 10 degrees, but finally, needle assembly for psychokinetic demonstration. 2 aluminum knitting needles were glued together at a 90-degree angle to provide observers with a good perspective. In this test, he essentially was going to make a needle spin using psychokinetic, energy with his mind, in a sense. Now, this is the demonstration that made him leave the country. And they went through so many rigorous testings. I think it was 11 times they went through this. And he spun it every time, I believe. And then Swami's instructions that the flame was seen by him above the left tip of the long needle, the short needle pointed at the couch. Face mask used to block air currents during psychokinetic demonstration. And I believe it was a curtain. After another brief silence, he began. The mantra was quite long, possibly 15 seconds, and was concluded with a loud exclamation, a word of command, at which time the needle rotated a small amount. The point he was focusing his eyes on moved toward him. We sat for a moment in silence, and I got up and examined the needle. It had moved 10 degrees. I immediately sought out the doctor with whom the first demonstration had been conducted and asked him how he felt about this one. He said, I believe that he did it with air currents. But, I objected, air currents as an explanation are not reasonable. He said, let's face it, this is probably the most remarkable person you or I will ever see. He can control blood flow in the palm of his hand. He can stop his heart from pumping blood. He can do things with his breath that you and I can't even imagine. I think he did it with air currents. But how? How do I know? Maybe he bounced air off his chest. But, I continued, how could he do that? He was totally covered over in his white gown, even his hands were covered. Don't ask me to explain, but I still think he did it with air. You were entertained by the accuracy of the Swami's prediction. I went into his office in the research building and said, you were right, Dr. X feels that it was done with air current. I guess Swami had predicted this. Swami seemed irritated and said, I told you so. He offered to do another demonstration behind a large board, but Dr. X was already busy with his patients and cannot be arranged concerning ESP-type events. Concerning ESP-type events, we had a number of personal illustrations with the Swami, but nothing that took place in the laboratory while he was wired up. On one occasion, when Elise, the Swami, and I were eating lunch at home, Pat Norris telephoned. She asked the Swami if she could talk to him for a few minutes at 1:30 p.m. He said yes. Turning from the phone, he asked me to find a paper and pencil for him. Then he sat on a couch in the corner of the living room and began thinking and writing while Elise and I cleared away the dishes. I kept wondering what he was doing. Glancing his way, I noticed he had put the piece of paper face down on the chair. Just as we were leaving to return to the office, Pat arrived. Should I return to college and get a PhD? He said. Ask another question. Pat said he kept asking for questions until she had asked 7 questions. When she was through with the last one, he grabbed the paper and handed it to her. Most of her questions and some suggestions were written there. One was wrong, and only one was partly related to the subject, but the others were correct. She said this was a real surprise. Swami Rama did not return to our lab after his visit to the conference in New Delhi. Instead, he sent a letter stating that after serious thought he had decided not to return to the Menninger Foundation. His main purpose in being with scientists could not be accomplished in the United States. He said because he wanted to make experiments in the therapeutic use of yoga, which he felt would be easier to do in India and would be more useful to humanity. Swami Rama did return to the United States, however, to continue lecturing and teaching and to establish a center of his own. Alright, so more things about Swami Rama. These are not the good things. He did have a sexual assault scandal where the center he created did have to pay out a woman for this sexual assault case. This happened a year after he died. So I do believe it was... the lawsuit was about them covering up this situation, and they still indicate evidence that the relationship was consensual. I'd have to go find the other article, but there is another one that does talk about multiple women who had these allegations. Alright. So, more information on it. What is this? I'm not exactly sure what this article is. Supposedly it's a journalist who talked to a woman that she knew who had studied at the institute under him. And in the beginning she said no, nothing is going on. But then years later she says, well, actually, there was this going on. She said that she had learned to be a good liar under his teachings. But one by one, Triseli says, the women backed down and decided not to pursue legal action. There was a few different ones. Apparently there was going to be a 60 Minutes production. Unable to complete her documentary on Swami Rama when the women involved back out and refused to appear on camera. The lawsuit I heard rumors about New York City never materialized. Two women who wrote statements about the cult awareness movement were among those involved. One stated she was a patient. The other stated she was 17 when Swami initiated sexual relationship with her. Agreed to consult with the women concerning legal action, and then they dropped out and decided not to pursue. Oddly enough, the woman who I think got the payout, I don't think is mentioned in here. Alright, so this specific woman involved with this journalist, the way it describes it going down here, he sort of got closer and closer with her before they did develop into what she believed was a exclusive sexual relationship. And in August, she said the Swami told her to meet in New York for the next step. And that was when it first happened, and then every couple weeks. So I guess there was a brainwashing mentality or an isolationist mentality where she thought he was doing it for her good, and maybe it's the only way he can break through some stubborn barrier in my ego. And then ex-members say Swami Rama also uses psychological insights to manipulate people. Many of them say they feared his wrath. They were disciples, and several still believe he has the power to inflict harm or illness on them from a distance. Each of the women I interviewed described how he could discern their particular needs and self-doubts and manipulate her spiritual beliefs or naivety in order to exploit her sexually. He has uncanny ability to suit his approach to each victim, they say. So, according to all the readings from this, he kind of plays into the almost cult-like mentality, which you know, I don't know where the accounts of this woman are. I backed out of that. The other woman, Carolyn, I think was just who that specific journalist was talking to. Alright, so, in a sense, I want to say it's like the worst part about all the other reading about the things this guy has done. You know, the stopping your heart, the dilating, the voluntary control of the involuntary functions wrapped around this in his later years. As bad as this is, I don't think this kind of thing should delegitimize what, the teachings that were there. Even in the other article, they do say that irregardless of the exploitation factor, there was value in the teachings. So, a part of me wonders if there was some kind of, he died in 96 and then this went through in 97. Maybe there could be some kind of underlying big conspiracy here, but I think at the end of the day, that's kind of looking too far into a situation that happened over 20 years ago. But you can't forgive this kind of thing, but you can, find the values in the teachings he had. He has a lot of teachings on YouTube, like things you can go listen to. It's been recorded that he actually had things he could do that were amazing scientifically. So it's kind of you don't gotta follow him in every aspect. I definitely wouldn't with this one, but as far as Swami Rama goes, he did a lot of amazing things in terms of health and what it meant. And I think that there's a lot of things that, maybe not him specifically, and just in the realm of like Eastern spirituality and yoga, there could be a lot of health advice and tricks, things that we don't know that about our bodies. But I do think it's important, if you look up somebody, don't glorify them entirely, because they could have done something like this. But I do think there's going to be this perception that this whole thing was a smear campaign, and it's just not the kind of thing you're going to know. I can definitely see how our pharmaceutical industries wouldn't want this guy to be revered as a good person, but at the same time, there's a pretty big payout by his institution. I don't know if his institution is even in, I think it was in New York. I don't even think it's there anymore. But yeah, what's odd to me is that there was a lot of women that came out, but only one woman got the payout. To me, that seems a bit wrong on their end. It's like, shouldn't the court allocate this to all the women? But I guess maybe it was just this one that went through, because supposedly the other ones backed down one by one. But yeah, you'd think 1.9 million could go to all the women involved in this. But irregardless, it's, don't let this kind of thing disregard his other teachings, but don't let his other teachings make you think this is all hunky-dory. But, alright. Play mine scary.